Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. I am Luke Lipinski.
And I'm Doug Cannon.
On this week's show, PK Subban is taking over the NHL, and the hockey fans in Orange County are reaching desperation mode.
We're also going to take a quick glimpse at the AHL playoffs as teams vie for the Calder Cup. Teams like the Toronto Marlies. We'll also take a quick look at the Memorial Cup.
Doug found a way to work Toronto hockey into a sentence with the word playoff in it. All that, plus a breakdown of every series so far. Let's drop the puck on episode 39. Right here we are, Luke Lipinski alongside Doug Cannon.
You know, you keep saying alongside, and you're actually across the desk from me.
Take two. All right, here we are, Luke Lipinski across the desk from Doug Cannon, as we are pretty much halfway through round number 2, unless you're LA and Anaheim, and I think they've played one game.
Yes.
Well, Anaheim hasn't played any games.
It's the only two teams playing are Pittsburgh and New York.
And they're about to wrap up game 4. LA and Anaheim haven't even played game 3 yet. It is episode 39.
Mm-hmm.
And
here we go again.
Brings us to the best
silly
time
game
of the week. Oh, it's the most serious game on the internet.
Okay.
Sweeping the nation. I will go first because, well, my pick for number 39, you're not eligible to use because you used him for like number 3 or something.
No, it was number 34.
Dominic Hasek.
And I concur. Now, it's 2 weeks in a row we've concurred.
I hear you saying that, but it doesn't matter because you already used Dominic Hasek for the number.
But it was legit. He was with Chicago, and
Bantam.
he wore 34. The first season was Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Second season, he wore 31. Mm-hmm. And then the remainder of his career, he wore 39.
Then next week, are you going to use Dominic Hasek for number 40?
No.
Oh. Runner-up?
Dougie Waite.
Doug Waite.
It has to be. I mean...
And I love how you put the hockey pronunciation. If your name is Doug and you play hockey, your name is Dougie.
Oh, yes. Dougie Waite. I mean, USA Hockey Hall of Famer, King Clancy winner, 4-time All-Star, Stanley Cup.
So what do they call Dougie Hamilton in the locker room?
Dougie.
Dougie?
No, he's just Dougie.
Okay. They don't come up with another nickname?
Maybe it's Dougie Hammy. I don't know.
They probably call him Hamsy or something.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to start in the Western Conference?
Yes, let's start in the Western Conference because we have an Eastern Conference underway, and hopefully by the time we get to the next segment, it'll be deeper in and we'll have a better feel for how the game's going.
Yeah, I don't know what day it is. That's kind of the standard at this time of year, but I know that Pittsburgh and the Rangers are playing
It is 2
4.
days after Cinco de Mayo.
It's 2 days after Game 3. This is the way that I know it. And they're in the third period, so hopefully that'll be done by the time we do the second segment. So where do you want to begin? Let's want to start in Los Angeles?
Yeah, let's start in L.A.
So Game 3 will be played in L.A. between the Ducks and the Kings tomorrow night.
Yes. And oy vey.
Do you have our predictions? Are we going to give those?
I got them sitting right here in front of me.
Okay, so we did the predictions. Obviously, we haven't done a show since the second round started.
Correct.
So, but we had the foresight. I don't know where this foresight came from, but we had the foresight to
You couldn't sleep one night and you texted me.
That's true. And so, and of course, it was about hockey. We made our predictions. I had Anaheim in 6. That's not looking great right now.
I had Anaheim in 7.
It's not looking great right now.
Not looking great right now. You know, it astonishes me because, you know, I said L.A. in 7 over San Jose, which happened.
As did I.
But I didn't think Anaheim was just going to hang up their skates and sit and watch.
Yeah, I mean, you've been really driving the Anaheim bandwagon all season.
I have.
From the start of the year, you've been saying this is the team that's going to the Stanley Cup. And ironically, I've disagreed with you all year. When I finally come around and pick Anaheim, they're just not even showing up.
So it's your fault.
Apparently, it's my fault. L.A. looks, I don't want to say unstoppable, but they are the hottest team in the playoffs right now. They've won 6 in a row. This is San Jose's fault. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
If I'm Anaheim, I'm like, thanks a lot, Sharks. It's one thing to lose a series. It's another thing to lose with the reverse sweep to close it out when you were up 3-0.
Right, and LA's just taking that momentum and taking it to the series, and I'm hoping, because my fantasy team is relying on it.
Yeah, you're done if Anaheim loses.
But I'm hoping, because I at least want to see a series. I don't want to see a sweep in any series, and I'm hoping that Anaheim makes the adjustments to come back. But a long time ago, you weren't too high on Hiller, and
now you know why.
And now we know why.
Yeah, which is weird because he was really good a couple years ago, and he was good at times this year. I mean, remember, Anaheim at one point this season was just winning 15 games in a row at a time, and it wasn't even an issue for them. But I worry about the teams that are bouncing back and forth between goalies heading into the playoffs, which Tampa Bay was doing out of just necessity. It wasn't their fault. But San Jose was doing it, and Anaheim was doing it with Anderson and Hiller, and they're still doing it. And I mean, look, Anaheim should have won Game 1. They were 7 seconds away from going up 1-0, and I do think once LA loses a game, it sounds weird to say, but they're riding so hot right now. Everything is going their way.
Well, and they're riding so hot, and Jonathan Quick is doing what everybody expects him to do.
But if Anaheim could have stolen Game 1, I think they would have had a much easier chance of winning Game 2.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that because it was at the Pond.
Yeah. Now they're down 0-2 going to LA.
Now they're going to the Staples Center. So I just don't know what to read into this. I mean, do they go with Anderson?
Good luck. I mean, we should have Bruce Boudreau on the show, and he'd probably ask us what he's supposed to do at this point in that situation in goal, because you have to have your goalie. You have to have him established. You have to have him rolling, as Jonathan Quick is doing. Even when he was bad at the start of the Sharks series, goals against average was over 7 through 2 games. It doesn't matter. He just works his way through it, and now he's the hottest goalie in the playoffs. But if you can't score, and suddenly Anaheim can't score, it doesn't even really matter what your goalie's doing. And I told you this off the air. Part of my reason I was kind of pulling for Anaheim in this series, it's nothing against LA. It's just if it becomes LA and Chicago in the Western Conference Finals, we already saw that last year. The Blackhawks pretty much cruised through as much as you can against LA in 5 games. I don't want to see the same thing again this year. But LA does look different. They didn't have Marian Gaborik last year, and he scores every game now.
Yeah, I mean, he kicked it off again the other night, and I sent a friendly text to you regarding that goal. But, I mean, Hiller, surprisingly, is a 1.75.
He hasn't been terrible, but he also hasn't played in every game.
No, he's played in 4 and started 2.
So at this point, you've got to stick with him. He's your goalie. And then you turn to your offense and say, put the puck behind Jonathan Quick. If you have to, watch the highlights of the first 2 games between San Jose and LA when everything was going in. Because you see this every year, and I really think we saw it last year with Pittsburgh against Boston, where the Bruins gave up 2 goals in that whole series. When that goalie is just doing everything right, you can't, as the other team, do him the favor of thinking every shot has to be perfect. Because then you're not even getting shots in on goal because you're waiting for the perfect shot, or you're missing the net, and you're just making his job, which he's already doing so well, that much easier.
Yeah, no, Anaheim definitely is going to have to get physical with LA. They're going to have to slow him down with the body. They're going to have to bang in front of Quick. Quick's an aggressive goalie to begin with. So if he comes out of his crease and wants to challenge, then if I'm an Anaheim player, I take the challenge.
And they're so familiar with the Kings. I mean, they play them 5-6 times every year, and they have the guys to do that. I mean, Anaheim's not a small team. They have the big, rugged forwards to get in there and just make life tough on them. So this is weird because I thought that this series, I thought Boston-Montreal would be the best of these 4, and it has been.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I thought this one would be right there with them, and it absolutely has not been so far. That Game 2 was, hockey's never unwatchable, especially playoff hockey. But there were times where I was about to nod off in that one, and I was out at a sports bar.
Yeah, and I was in my car listening to it on the radio, and I'm just like, ugh.
It wasn't great. Anaheim 4-1 against the Kings this season during the regular season.
Well, I mean, Anaheim was 4-1 against every single team this season. I mean,
that's true.
I mean, this team should not be struggling at this point, and I don't understand if it's just LA took the momentum of winning 4 in a row into Game 1, put a competitive game together, and like you said, in the dying seconds, took it away. And then now that confidence is even bigger because you took it a Game 1 in their rink, and then you come back in Game 2, and Anaheim just doesn't know what to do.
So I'll throw this out at you. I wanted to do this, and I think we could probably do it on the fly. If the season ended right now, and we'll do this, I guess, for each team. If the Kings won the Stanley Cup right now,
we'll do the Western this one, and we'll do the Eastern next one.
Who would be the Conn Smythe Trophy winner if LA won the Cup?
If LA won, Quick.
Yeah, see, my thought was Kopitar because he's right up there at the very top of the NHL in points in the playoffs. But I'm looking at these games now. Anaheim outshot LA 37-17 in Game 2, and they scored 1 goal.
Right.
It's tough to go against Jonathan Quick. And look, Marian Gaborik it's a pretty good choice, too. He had 3 goals in the span of 12 and a half minutes to close out Game 1 and start Game 2.
Yeah, and that's only based on a couple of games.
Yeah.
But I think just the way Quick has turned himself around and put the team where it's supposed to be, because all the pundits, including us, would have expected the Sharks to be where LA is right now.
Well,
even though we picked LA.
Yeah, we both picked LA, but I did think Anaheim would. And, I mean, we've seen this movie before. If Quick gets hot, that's it. I mean, they won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, and he was really the only guy that was.
And he was the guy that did it, right? And a lot of players play loose when they know that if I make a mistake in the neutral zone or if I make a mistake at the blue line and I know my goalie's as hot as Jonathan Quick is right now, I'm still playing loose because I have confidence.
LA's got to feel like they're playing with house money right now, too. I mean,
absolutely. Good way to
put it.
They
got
it.
Nothing to lose. Real quickly, Anaheim, I guess Ryan Getzlaf has been their best player. He has 10 points in 7 games. Hasn't done much in this series, but nobody has yet. And again, it's only 2 games in. I mean, it wouldn't be unfathomable for Anaheim to turn the series around, but they have to win Game 3.
Just have to do it one game at a time.
110% helps, too, if you can give that much.
That doesn't exist.
No, I'm sorry. Quick question for you. Is this Teemu Selanne's final week of hockey in the NHL?
I hope not, because then my fantasy team is done.
Yeah.
So I want to see Timo play all the way to the final.
Do you have Teemu? Because I know we have 12-man rosters, and I think you have 9 Ducks.
No, I don't have Timo.
Okay. You have every other Duck.
Every other Duck.
You Limited Kings.
No, I'm still going to stick with Anaheim. I've picked him. I picked him to go to the final. I think Timo will celebrate his final year in the NHL and playing professional hockey, hoisting the cup.
Well, that's a bold statement right now. I don't know about that. Chicago, Minnesota. I believe my prediction here was Chicago in 5. My original prediction was Chicago in 2.
Yeah, it can still happen.
I hope Minnesota wins. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely hope Minnesota. I'm fine if Minnesota wants to go to the Stanley Cup. And it was brought up the other day.
Well, they spent a lot of money, so the owner would probably be pretty happy if they went to the Cup.
That's true, and they've got some young guys stepping up. Mikael Granlund has been excellent, and not just excellent in that he makes fun plays and highlight reel plays. He makes them at key moments. And the Wild are coming off a nice win in Game 3,
last night,
4-0. My biggest concern with Minnesota going into the series was much like Tampa Bay going into the playoffs. It's tough to lose your goalie and switch to your backup right at this time of year, especially then, here's the defending Stanley Cup champs coming to town, and they're red hot. They've won 4 in a row. Ilya Bryzgalov isn't even really their backup. He's their 4th goalie they've used this year.
He's like their 4th starter.
So he gets a shutout last night, which I never saw coming.
I didn't see that coming either, and I was pretty down on Briz because he just wasn't playing well, and they had to bring Kemper in. But, he shut everybody up last night with a shutout. So, and I watched some of that game. Dude, he was Briz of old. He'd throw up an arm and it would stop a puck.
Yeah, Briz of regular season, of old.
Right. He'd just throw up a stick, throw up a leg, nothing was getting by him.
So, I don't know. I mean, that's going to be an interesting...
Almost Dominic Hasek-ish.
Well, let's not get crazy here. Chicago in that game, that was a weird game. The shots on goal were 19-18 by the end of the 60 minutes. The Wild walked away with a 4-0 win. They trailed the series 2-1. The first 2 games were not close, 5-2 and 4-1, except they really were close. Both of those games were close in the third period.
Right.
So Minnesota and the Wild were 3-1-1 against Chicago during the regular season. They can beat this team. It's just the goaltending. That's
you're looking at a 2.0 for Kemper and a 3.0 for Briz.
And more than that, just the deeper the series goes, if it hopefully goes deep, Chicago's been there before. They haven't lost a playoff series in 2 years. Briz has been there before, and he hasn't had much success other than that year he kind of stepped in for Anaheim as basically his rookie year.
Yeah, I forget what broadcast I was listening to, but the commentators made a good point. It's like you got to watch the teams that have the experience. So Minnesota played a really good game last night. They take it 4-0. But like you just mentioned, Chicago has the experience. So the deeper the series goes, it clearly is going to favor Chicago. Now, the thing I do like about Minnesota is the fact that I'm upset with them because they eliminated Colorado. But
that was a great series, by the way.
Yes,
We didn't even
was.
get to talk about that.
But the thing I like about Minnesota is that they're a hardworking team. their coach gets every minute out of them to count, and they work hard, and they do the things they need to do, and they make adjustments as the game's going along, and they're just a hard working team. So maybe that will over skill might put them a little deeper.
It's
because you can't have Zach Parise doing everything.
No, although right now that's working. But I will throw this number out at you. Here's the shots on goal for Chicago in all three of these first games: 22, 22, and 19. If you're holding the Blackhawks to basically an average of 20 shots a game, you're doing something right.
Absolutely.
Now, Chicago has still scored 9 goals in the first 2 games, and so Briz is going to have to be better. And he got the shutout last night, but he only faced 19 shots. I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm still definitely taking Chicago, but if Minnesota can play this sort of, for lack of a better term, because everybody keeps using it, boring style of hockey, if I'm Minnesota, I don't care if it's boring or not. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to win games.
And I'm here to go to the Stanley Cup. And my team just held the defending champs to 19.
And shut them out.
And you're not going to win a lot of games at the NHL level with only 19 shots on net.
No.
That's only, I'll round it up, 6 shots a period.
Basically, yeah. And Minnesota hasn't had a ton either. I mean, they had 18 last night, 19 in Game 2. They had 32 in Game 1, but it didn't help. But they've got guys that can score. Parise can score. Granlund can score. Pominville has quietly put up quite a few assists in these playoffs.
As has Danny Heatley.
Yeah, he's just come back from nowhere.
So
Mikko Koivu. I mean, they've got pieces.
And they got that guy. What's his name? Molson.
Yeah.
I mean, if he breaks out, he's not.
He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been.
But if he breaks out and scores the way he can score, so they do have weapons.
He's got 3 points in the playoffs, but they also have Ryan Suter, who we haven't mentioned, and that's a real nice asset to have, playing basically 30 minutes a game back there.
Yeah.
I will say what I said last week. If you're going to take Chicago out in the playoffs, you're going to have to win overtime games against them. And I don't want to write Minnesota off. Like I said, I'm absolutely hoping they can pull this off, but they've got a lot of work ahead of them.
But you're right. If they can hold them to 19 shots a game, you're going to see overtime games.
It goes back to what we said last week, and we've said in the past about Ovechkin, last week about the Penguins, but in previous shows about Ovechkin, if you have a team with that much skill and you're holding them down, and they're going to get more and more frustrated, and they're going to get maybe taken off their game, it's tough to take the Blackhawks off their game, but Minnesota was able to do it last night. We'll see if they can do it again. You're tuned into the Hockey Podcast. Follow us on Twitter @HockeyPodcast for even more hockey news.
#DoIt.
Segment 2 over to the Eastern Conference. Before we do that, though, Doug, we did not give our Conn Smythe picks from Chicago, Minnesota. I would go Parise. I think we both would. He's got 10 points. Either way,
I agree with that.
And then, he's got 13 points in 10 games. And Patrick Kane, I guess, has scored timely goals for Chicago.
He's just been a force for them. I'd go with Kane.
So, on to the East now. Game 4 in New York just wrapped up, so I guess we start there.
Let's start there. It's a good place to start.
Penguins
I can't think of a better place to start than Game 4.
Thank you for all the reassurance on that decision, Doug Cannon. Penguins win at 4-2. They put 4 goals past Henrik Lundqvist. The Rangers only get 15 by the end of the game. I'm just going to sit here and make mistakes through the whole show.
Okay.
How's that? Then I'll correct myself.
And then I'll go,
Well, you do that every week anyway. The Rangers, I don't see a power play goal here. No. So
they were 0 for 5 last night. They played last night? No, the night before. 2 nights ago.
But they
0
played
for 5.
3 games in 4 nights before this one.
Right. So they got to be tired.
Well, and look, the Rangers had played 5 and 7 nights by the end of Game 3. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I know the reporters just continuously asked questions like this, and finally Alain Vigneault was kind of like, the schedule's been ridiculous on us specifically. Now, Pittsburgh had played 3 games in 4 nights too, so it's not like it was completely their thing. And the comment I heard from a lot of people that really does kind of sum it up, if you don't want to play 5 games in 7 nights, why don't you put Philadelphia away in less than 7 games? Then you wouldn't have had that problem if you're the Rangers. But I was interested to hear him say that because, in my mind, that puts a lot of weight on New York to then come out and win Game 4 because they finally had a day off.
Mm-hmm.
And it just ended and they didn't win.
So.
Exactly. At least none of us are being wrong if we're not talking.
Yeah. No, just because you had a day off, I don't think that you're totally recuperated. Because New York, yes, they should have put Philly away if you wanted some time off. But the schedule maker should have something built in if the series goes 7.
Yeah, but what is the schedule maker? I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs of schedule making, but don't they have to balance around what's going on at Madison Square Garden? And as I understand it, there's a Billy Joel concert going on at Madison Square Garden.
Well, Billy Joel can just wait.
Billy Joel waits for no one, not even the piano man. Is that Billy Joel?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, look at that. I know music from the 70s. Rangers 0 for 2 on the power play tonight, 0 for their last 36 on the power play. Penguins scored a shorthanded goal
but you can
tonight.
still give them a night off while Billy's singing and then come back the next night.
Apparently, and this is all just rumor, from what I've heard, Billy Joel's crew needs a couple days to set up the stage for Billy Joel.
He plays the piano.
Look, I didn't make the world, okay? And do you really think it would make that much of a difference? The Rangers had a night off before this one, and they had 15 shots on goal.
Well, you're not going to, again, we just talked about it in the first segment. You're not going to win many games if you're only getting 5 shots a period.
No.
I'm sorry.
Henrik Lundqvist.
You could be a bantam in youth hockey and get 5 shots a period, and you're not going to win that game. I'm sorry. You're just not.
Never going to happen.
So they have got to fix that.
They're 0 for 15 on the power play in this series, but they also closed out the last series by going 0 for 17, and then 0 for the last 2 in Game 2. So they are 0 for their last 36 on the power play, and that's clearly been the difference. I mean, look, here's the scores in these games. 3-2 New York in Game 1. They rally. They win in overtime. Pittsburgh wins Game 2, 3-0. They outshot the Rangers 35-22. If you watch that game, Pittsburgh pretty much dominated that game. Game 1 was pretty even. Game 3, Pittsburgh got timely goals, but they got outshot 35-15 and still won the game. And then tonight, shots on goal were 27-15. Henrik Lundqvist has been great, at least until tonight. But if you don't score, you're not. If you don't score, you're not going to be
You just said it, though, because Game 3, I sent you a text regarding the 15 shots that Pittsburgh put up.
They were quality shots, though. I mean, there was a couple breakaways.
And then how many? New York had 35 that night, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
You got to win the games where you outshoot the other team by 20.
But again, you said it. That particular game, they went 0 for 5 on the power play. If you're not scoring on the power play, you're in a heap of trouble.
Well, and a lot of people have made this comment already, but it's not just that they're not scoring on the power play. It's the term I've heard a lot, and I think it's pretty much spot on, so I'll just steal it for the show, is it's sucking the life out of the Rangers when they're on the power play. They get a chance. They get 2 minutes. They had a 4-minute power play in that game with a chance to turn that game in their favor. And not only do they not score, Pittsburgh's the team scoring either right after the power play or tonight shorthanded.
Okay, so here's another problem. Your leading scorer is Brad Richards with 7 points.
Yeah, I mean, you have to score to win. I think the Rangers have kind of gotten into this situation, and the series isn't over. I mean, they could still come back, but you put in the formula for the Rangers to win is Lundqvist makes a lot of great plays, keeps you in the game, and then you get timely goal scoring. They're not getting the timely goal scoring.
Rick Nash, 10 games, 0 goals.
Yeah, I wondered how long it would take you to get to Rick Nash.
But that's a legitimate concern.
Not just no goals, but also not that many assists. What does he have, 4? I mean, he was good in the beginning of the Philadelphia series. He wasn't scoring, but he had 4 assists. I want to say they were in like the first 5 or 6 games.
In 5 games, Danny Carcillo has 2 goals.
Yeah.
That's not a good situation for the New York Rangers. And again, as in Minnesota, you can't expect Zach Parise to do everything. In New York, you can't expect Lundqvist to carry and win every game. Yes, your goaltenders are going to steal games. Your goaltenders are going to keep you in games. But Henrik can't do it all. I mean, those guys have got to do something. He's playing well. I've watched, some of these games, and Lundqvist is playing very well. But if you're not going to score at the other end, and I think you hit it on the head too, man. I mean, when you get a power play and you're 0 for 5 in a game, that's just got to suck the confidence right out of you. And as a coach, how many times do you change the lineup? How many power plays are you going to put together until it finally clicks?
I wonder how much of this is the fact that their power play is naturally going to hinge on Martin St. Louis, because that's why you brought him over.
Correct.
but he hasn't been on the Rangers that long. He's used to playing on a power play with Steven Stamkos, who the Rangers don't have anybody that's the equivalent to him. It's just they are in a tough spot now because Pittsburgh, and I've been as critical as anybody of Marc-Andre Fleury, and I reserve the right to be as critical as I need to be of him a week from now if he just melts down. He's been good, specifically in Game 3, and he got the shutout in Game 2. Pittsburgh had to grind out 2 pretty much unstoppable goals to get past Lundqvist to win that game, and then they got the empty netter. And that seemed to give him confidence because he had the shutout. He, for my money, essentially stole Game 3 for Pittsburgh, and then they get the win tonight. He was solid, but he's just not facing many shots.
Yeah, tonight he didn't face any shots. But that's what you want. You want your guys in front of you doing that for you so that you can focus on, if they're 15 quality shots, that you can at least focus on them.
And you build up his confidence. I think the Penguins defensively, again, this is a team I watch pretty closely. This is the best their defense has looked probably since even before they won the Stanley Cup in 2009. Just as a unit, they're just playing good defense. Not just this series, against Columbus for the most part, too. They haven't been perfect on defense, but they're not really supposed to be built around defense. And they're doing a pretty good job. Paul Martin's had an excellent playoffs. Matt Niskanen is going to make a ton of money in free agency. They got Brooks Orpik back tonight. And that's not even talking about Chris Letang, who we didn't even know if he was ever going to play hockey again a couple months ago.
Yeah, that's just, and now he's playing playoff hockey. Rick Nash has more penalty minutes than goals.
Do you do a separate Rick Nash podcast that I don't know about? Because that would be fantastic. I will give this to the Rangers fans. You know how you watch a series or you just watch a game and you're watching and the player goes down and the home crowd always just immediately just whines for a penalty every time?
Right.
I have noticed, I don't know if the Rangers fans are just so fed up that they are just checking out, but when a player goes down and it's not a penalty, they don't whine. They are educated hockey fans.
Right.
Now, they were booing their team off the ice tonight. That's a different story.
Yeah. Well, I think New York's got a very big hill to climb.
Who did you take in the series? I think I had Pittsburgh in 7.
I had Pittsburgh in 7 as well.
Who's your Conn Smythe winners right now?
Going into tonight's game, I was leaning on Lundqvist for the Rangers.
Yeah, you got to go with that.
And
Pittsburgh's been balanced. I would go Malkin just the way he's playing. He doesn't have a ton. I guess he's got 5 goals now.
I'd go Martin.
Martin's been good.
Martin's has been so Martin, and because they're the type of players I like, Suter.
Defenseman.
Yes.
Those are the sort of players you like.
Suter.
Oh, yeah, he's been really good, and he scored tonight shorthanded.
He's just a workhorse, man. He just grinds it out. He works. Paul Martin's the same way. Paul Martin he was carrying the puck into the zone, setting up plays, dropping back to the blue line, back checking. He was doing everything, and he's been doing it since the playoffs started.
Brandon Sutter's the guy they got in the trade for Jordan Staal, and he picked up his 4th goal tonight. If Pittsburgh's getting 4 goals from Brandon Sutter, they're in a pretty good situation. And they continue to win. Crosby's getting assists. He had 2 more tonight, but he still just has the 1 goal. It was a nice goal. It was a breakaway goal.
But, you said it. I mean, the scoring is being spread around.
Yeah.
And that's what you want.
This is the best they've looked in a while. Jussi Jokinen actually leads the team with 6 goals. And
I think he leads in goals and assists, doesn't he?
I know he's got the 6 goals. I think he only has 3 assists. But it seems like every time they need a goal, he gets it. And it's amazing to me when I look back that Pittsburgh was able to just kind of pick him up because nobody else wanted him a couple of years ago.
Yeah, Paul Martin's got 8 assists in 10 games.
Yeah, that'll work.
I'll take that from a defenseman anytime.
So the best series, certainly of this round, and with the potential to maybe even surpass Colorado, Minnesota. Agreed?
I think it's already there.
Montreal, Boston. I had Montreal in 7.
I had Boston in 6. Not looking good for Doug.
6 doesn't look good. 7's certainly still possible. PK Subban. I know he won the Norris last year. He has to be the breakout star in the playoffs.
How many times have we talked about PK Subban on the show?
A lot.
And how he's overlooked and he just keeps on producing and producing and producing and producing. He plays hard. He plays with a little bit of an edge. People don't like him because of it.
Why don't people like him? Because look, if it comes down to Pittsburgh, Montreal in the next round, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but if that happens, I'm sure I won't like him. But he's my favorite player outside of Pittsburgh and Phoenix to watch right now.
Because he plays hard. He plays with grit. He plays with passion. And I think that's what people don't like. He plays with swagger. He's very confident in his game.
That's not bad for hockey at all.
It's not bad for any sport.
It's a defenseman that scores breakaway goals.
Oh, did you see the one out of the box?
Oh. How many goals have we seen in these playoffs scored by guys stepping out of the penalty box? I can think of 3 off the top of my head.
And as a coach, I had a conversation with some other coaches last night at the rink, and I went, how does that happen? Because my biggest mantra is game awareness. Know where you are in the game. You have to know as a pro that you're down, you're on a penalty kill. You have to know how much time is left. You have to. And as a defenseman, my head is always on a swivel, checking that box, checking the clock, checking the box, and I'm just going back and forth. Because he's not going to... If I'm on the ice, you are not getting behind me. I'll play conservative, and I'll hang back. I will hang back behind the penalty box door.
Not just any defenseman. These are Boston's defensemen. Probably the best group of defensemen in the NHL. Now, typically, if you're on the power play and the other team's penalty is about to expire, your goalie's banging a stick on the ice.
Correct.
I don't know if they just couldn't hear that because they were in Montreal and it was so loud or what, but it was amazing to see Subban, and I've seen the angle of the play from so many different views. He just steps out of the box and they just hit him with the pass basically in mid-stride. And Montreal has been really fun to watch. If they win the Stanley Cup, you and I should get something because we've been picking them not to win the whole cup, but to really put them on the radar. Since
and the other
playoffs.
thing about that goal was the fact that the penalty he took to be in the box in the first place was a horrible, horrible call.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a roughing call, and I'm like, how can it be roughing? He was right there. It was a clean hit. The player had just released the puck, so he did everything a defenseman was supposed to do. The commentators calling the game that night did notice that his arm hit the chest. So from a distance, it looked like an elbow, but an elbow wasn't called. A roughing call was called.
He, at least in this series, he does kind of check with his forearm. Like, I've seen him just grab guys and just kind of throw them. But Boston's doing it back. It's just a physical. I mean, this series is what playoff hockey is all about. And, yeah, I picked Montreal to win in 7. I would absolutely not be shocked if Boston came back and won the series. You know they're going to respond in a big way in Game 4. They don't get rattled. Claude Julien, he's one of the top 2 or 3 coaches in the NHL.
You got 2 solid coaches in this series.
Yeah, Therrien's been excellent.
With Therrien. And I like the way both bench bosses run their show. And it's just going to be, I don't know.
How intense is Michel Therrien? Like, the guy is you're on edge watching him. Watching him watch hockey puts me on edge. That was a nice pickup for Montreal when they hired him as their coach.
Well, so was Thomas Vanek.
Well, yeah, but you can thank the Islanders for that.
But, yeah, I think this game, I picked Boston at 6. I don't know. Could go 7. I think your prediction is going to come big in this one.
This is 2 heavyweights, and the thing about Montreal that I like is they're not intimidated by Boston at all. Now, we talked about this last week because we knew this was going to be a series. Montreal had success against the Bruins in the regular season, and that doesn't always carry over. But at least mentally, you do know going into a series where you're playing a team like Boston that everybody's picking to win the Stanley Cup, we know we can beat them because we have beat them frequently. They are one of the few teams that has a goalie that has the potential to win the goalie matchup against Boston and Carey Price, and so far he is. And then they've got a game breaker on defense like Subban, but I mean they've got Vanek, like you mentioned. They've got Pacioretty hasn't even really scored that much.
No.
Danny Briere scored a big goal the other night. I don't know what you call Mr. Playoff guy in hockey. He's not Mr. October. Mr. May? That doesn't sound as good, yeah. Either way, Montreal's got a pretty solid balanced attack too, and they've got goaltending.
The thing, too, is that the next game is you're still in the Bell Center. It's going to be crazy.
A chance to go up 3-1.
I mean, I was listening to the game on the radio the other night, and it sounded like I was at a European soccer match with the crowd chanting and just like every play. I mean, it was like the din of the crowd never got quiet.
They didn't have vuvuzelas, did they? Because those were annoying. And the World Cup's coming up this summer.
No, they didn't have any of those stupid horns.
You agree you're taking out a team like Boston if Montreal can do it? Each game gets tougher. Like, even if Montreal wins Game 4 and they go up 3-1, winning that fourth game against Boston is going to be so tough.
Yes.
I mean, it's like trying to knock out Mike Tyson.
You want to see physical hockey? That would be a physical hockey game if Montreal goes up 3-1. If Montreal wins, I think that your buddies over in PA are going to have a tough time.
Well, either one of them, if they can get past the Rangers. I mean, we saw what they did against Boston last year, which was nothing.
Right. But I'm just saying, if Pittsburgh goes up against Montreal, that's a tough hill for Pittsburgh.
For as much as we've talked all season, and rightly so, about how much tougher the Western Conference has been than the Eastern Conference this season, now that we're down to just 4 teams left in each conference, the very top of the East with Pittsburgh, Boston, Montreal, I think has pretty much the clear 3 best teams. The Rangers are probably the 4th. And again, they're not out of their series either. Those top 3 teams I'll put up against anybody in the West. It was just It was just the other 13 teams.
I agree.
So it's only going to get better from here.
You're listening to The Hockey Podcast. Feel free to email comments or questions to the show at our email address, thehockeypodcast@gmail.com.
Final segment, news and notes.
Our favorite. I love news and notes.
It's your favorite. I'm really partial to segment 2.
I like news and notes.
Segment 2, you never know what's coming
It's kind
up.
of a mishmash.
I like it. It's a mishmash that we always, between segments, we're like, this will be like 5 minutes, and then it goes for an hour and a half.
That's right.
So here we go.
Numero uno.
Hour number 1. Peter Laviolette is not where we're starting. We're starting with Kirk Muller, aren't we?
No, Peter. Let's start with Peter. I like him. He's one of my favorite coaches.
A great pickup for the Nashville Predators, at least in my mind.
Absolutely.
I made the point to you off the air that we always talk about how the West is better than the East from top to bottom in the regular season. It's stuff like this is why the West is better than the East. Philadelphia gives up on Peter Laviolette 3 games into the season. Now, they make the playoffs. I contend they would have anyway. It was 3 games out of 82. But not only do they give up on Laviolette, Nashville is now able to scoop him up. And this is really interesting to me because he's kind of an offensive-minded coach, and that team hasn't played offense in years.
No, they've played a real grinded-out style under Barry Trotz. And before we started doing the show, I said it. I think this is what Nashville needs. Barry's been there since day one. They need a fresh voice, a fresh approach. They have the horses. They definitely have the horses to play his style. And he's got good goaltending. He's got good defense.
They have the horses to play Doug Cannon style, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So
Nashville's going to be a tough team to play against.
Do they have the pieces to play the offense that they're talking about, though? Like, if I'm Peter Laviolette, I'm looking at this situation and I'm saying, based on my track record, I'm pretty good at getting offense out of my players. I'm going into a situation where I have just a beast of a goalie in Pecorine when he's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Shea Weber and Seth Jones on the blue line. And those aren't the only guys. Those are just the 2 main guys they have on the blue line. So you're set at goal and defense. But who do they have up front?
Well, you got Fisher, Hornquist.
And that's it.
Yeah.
But they do have young guys. They've got Philip Forsberg. They got in the trade from Washington a couple of years ago. They've got Kalle Jarnkrok, who's supposed to be good. They've got some good forward prospects that maybe develop a little bit better under Peter Laviolette and that sort of system he's going to bring.
Well, again, though, I mean, you've got forwards that were playing under that grind 'em type of hockey. You don't know how these guys are going to answer the bell when they get to be free and be creative and do things, right?
That's true.
And now, with a coach that wants that, you do have solid goaltending. You do have solid defensemen that you can allow your forwards to be creative, and they might want to be creative because they got the confidence behind them to be creative. I think Nashville's a team to watch next year.
Well, there's no more room in the Western Conference playoffs. Like, I don't see any of the 8 teams that made it this year having much of a drop-off.
No.
Nashville was right there. Phoenix was right there. So now you're looking at 10 contenders. Depending what Vancouver does, they can't be down for too long. Maybe they can. I don't know.
All the hockey fans in North America are going to start watching the Western Conference.
I think they already are.
The TV ratings are going to drop on the East Coast.
Well, I don't know if that's going to happen. That's just crazy talk. Nashville, is this why they got rid of Barry Trotz? Because they knew Laviolette was out there?
I don't know if they did it because he knew they were out there. I think that Barry's always gotten his team to the playoffs or always close to the playoffs, and once they get to the playoffs, they don't tend to go deep. I think Barry's been there since day one. I think Barry Trotz is still a wonderful coach. I think it's time. Sometimes you just need a breath of fresh air and you need to change it up, and I think that's why the decision was made.
But we talked about this when they fired him. Pecorine played 24 games this year because of injury.
Correct.
They went 7-1-2 down the stretch once they had their team back together. They missed the playoffs by 3 points, but again, their goalie played 24 games out of 82.
I even think that if Rini was healthy and they made the playoffs, the thing with Nashville is they tend not to go deep. It's San Jose all over. It's San Jose.
Well, let's not get crazy.
And I just
Need to
when
change.
teams don't go deep, you need to change something up. You just got to, and I don't think. I mean, Barry's a heck of a coach. He did wonders with the team. I don't think it was a slam against him. I think they just needed a fresh voice in there.
It just makes a little more sense to me when they, and I hear what you're saying, and that does make sense too, but it just in my mind, it was tough to give up on Barry Trotz with the way they closed out the season and everything. Now it makes a little more sense because they've got former Stanley Cup winner, Peter Laviolette. The team he won the Stanley Cup with still doesn't have a coach because they just fired Kirk Muller.
That I didn't see coming.
Well, that was an amazing transition that I feel like I deserve extra credit for.
That was a beautiful segue.
Thanks.
Done like a true pro.
It feels forced now. I don't
No,
believe
it's
you.
not forced.
No, it's forced.
Okay.
So Carolina doesn't have a coach.
It was forced.
I don't know. See, I knew it. The Florida Panthers don't have a coach. Vancouver doesn't have a coach, and Washington doesn't have a coach.
That's okay.
Well, it's okay for now. It's not okay in October.
Well, we're not even at the draft yet.
Do you believe that you have to have a coach before the draft?
No.
Okay.
No.
Why not?
Because I think most decisions come draft time are done with the scouts and the general manager and his staff. Yes, you want your coach to have some kind of input because he is going to have to coach those players. But I think at this level, if I was hired in July to coach the Carolina Hurricanes as a professional coach, as long as the guys that hired me believe in my system and let me do my thing, that I can work with the players that I'm given, and then I'll start working with the GM at that point. I don't think it's absolutely drop dead necessary that the coach has to be at the table on draft day.
I would agree with you in this regard of it's hockey. Generally speaking, the guy you're drafting this summer isn't stepping right in and playing. It's not like this is the NBA.
Yeah, you're not going
NFL.
to get that player. You're not every draft. You're not going to get a Nate McKinnon
that steps right in this year. I mean, even if he steps in 2 or 3 years down the road. However, I'm going to pull the old switcheroo on you.
Uh-oh.
The Florida Panthers have the number 1 pick in the draft. To me, they need to have a coach before the draft. Because, in theory, you are drafting a guy that you expect in Florida to step in and be your best player next year. So, with that in mind, I want my coach there. Carolina can wait. Vancouver can wait. It'd be great if Vancouver rehired John Tortorella. Washington Capitals, have you heard they might be interested in John Tortorella?
Well, that'll go well.
Does
he know Russian?
He'd have to learn in a hurry. But I think Florida does need to kind of get on it.
I think Florida needs to get on a lot of things.
That's true, and it starts with picking a coach. And I think they have to pick a coach that's been around. You know, they've tried the new coach thing. They've actually tried it their last 3 guys. They need an established coach.
I think you're right.
So, I know.
Barry Trotz.
That's why I said it. Hey, why not? I tell you what, Florida could do a lot worse than Barry Trotz.
Oh, absolutely.
He could step in there and at least make them a playoff contender, even with the lineup they have.
They got a goalie.
They do have a goalie. We may have stumbled onto something here. Barry Trotz, I'm sure he loves the Florida weather too, especially in the winter. Maybe does a little golfing.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Side note, I don't. I tried golfing the other day and I'm terrible.
Philadelphia. Little shell game going on over there.
So Ron Hextall is your new general manager in Philadelphia. But
so what happened to Paul Holmgren?
He's not gone. He moved up from general manager.
Shocking.
Holmgren's made a few questionable personnel decisions over the last, a few years.
Talking on the ice?
So, yeah. and now he's the president. So there you go.
Yeah, he's playing Brigus Goloff, who just had a shutout the other night.
Yeah, see? So he's doing good for the league.
He's doing good, yes.
He's motivating players
okay,
all
so that
around
was the front office shuffle over in Philadelphia.
Seems like Hextall was
It wasn't
in
the
line.
Buffalo shuffle, it was the Philadelphia shuffle.
So it was better than the Super Bowl shuffle. That's not something anybody needs.
Okay, so the playoffs are going on, and the NHL is not the only one that's got playoffs going on.
Are you talking about my adult league? I see where you're going.
Oh,
with
you in the
this.
playoffs?
No.
Oh,
The season
it just started. Yeah,
we were in the playoffs, and I now notice we didn't even talk about that on the show.
Well, it's for another podcast.
No, it's not.
But the American League, the American Hockey League, is in their playoffs currently. They also are in the semis.
And they also only have one series playing games.
What is it with the hockey schedule makers? I mean, the Eastern Conference semis, they've played 2 games. Western Conference semi, 0.
Yeah, well, what's the series that they've actually played? St. John's Ice Caps
Against
and
Norfolk Admirals.
Now, the Norfolk Admirals, not the Milwaukee Admirals or any of the other 17 Admirals in the AHL.
No, Milwaukee Admirals, they got knocked out.
You know, there's no Admirals in any other sport, and yet there's a ton in the AHL. Why? Explain this to me. It's like the Rough Riders in Canadian football. Like 90% of the league is the Rough Riders.
You need Admirals to run things.
All right. I don't know why I asked you. Are you bringing up the AHL because the Toronto Marlies are in the second round and this is Toronto's best chance to win something?
Yes!
That's what I figured.
So the Series 1 is tied at 1-1. And then over in PA, you've got the Scranton Penguins against the Providence Bruins. So, a little foreshadowing maybe?
Well, I like those teams because you don't have to guess who they're affiliated with, especially because Providence's logo is just the Bruins logo, except they pulled off part of the B and turned it into a P.
Right. And then over in the West, you've got the Texas Stars.
That's a pretty creative logo as well.
And the Grand Rapids Griffins.
Detroit.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you have the Wolves, Chicago.
Which is the St. Louis Blues. It's like an education for everybody.
And the Toronto Marlies. I wonder who they're...
How big are the Marlies in Toronto?
Very big.
Like, are they bigger as an AHL team than, like, I don't know, the Panthers are as an NHL team?
The Chicago Wolves and the Toronto Marlies pack their houses as they do their NHL teams in the same city.
And they do have the benefit of being the only show in town when May rolls around.
Correct.
So that helps.
Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
that one. That was very, very good.
Just taking different angles here. So there's your final 8 teams in the AHL.
So we'll follow that and see how that goes. And then, my favorite, the Mem Cup is starting on May 16th.
Yeah, it's about a week from 2 days from now.
But we got to wait for the OHL to wrap up theirs. And all the CHL teams are in the finals. So over in the OHL, the Ontario Hockey League, you have the Guelph Storm playing the... I think it's the Brampton
Battalion.
The Battalion, that's correct. Guelph is up 2-1 in that series.
So just for our listeners that maybe don't follow the Memorial Cup, which I don't know why, there's 4 teams.
Mm-hmm.
You've got one team, which is the host team, which will be the London Knights this year, which is actually the team I'm most excited to see because they've got a few players I want to watch, specifically Max Domi because we're here in Phoenix and he had, I think, 93 points this season. So he's a point producer. But not just him. I mean, they have Bo Horvat, who Vancouver traded Corey Schneider for, essentially. And that I don't know how that team isn't still playing in their playoffs. But either way, they're one of 4 teams that makes the Memorial Cup. And then the other 3 are just the winners of each of those junior leagues.
Right, so you got the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League and the Western Hockey League, the WHL. So over in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, this is going to be very, very difficult. You have...
This is all you've ever wanted, was to pretend to know how to speak French.
You have the Val d'Or against the Bas-Camo.
Yeah, you failed.
I failed. But the Val d'Ors are up 2-1.
Okay.
And I think their full title is
Oh, no.
Les Foyers de Val d'Or.
Isn't that part of your house? Isn't the foyer like the part where you have like the French
No, that's
doors?
the foyer.
Oh, well, whatever.
And then over in the Western Hockey League, we have the Portland Winterhawks and the Edmonton Oil Kings.
I feel like the Portland Winterhawks are always there in the Western Hockey League, and I feel like the London Knights are always there from the OHL.
Yeah, they're too strong, and the Winterhawks are up 2-1 over the Oil Kings in Edmonton. So there's the setup for the Mem Cup, and I do believe I was correct in the Mem Cup starts May 16th with the team from the Q playing the London Knights.
And look, if you are a fan of an NHL team that's out of it by May 16th, I don't expect you to stop watching the NHL playoffs because that would be ludicrous. But the Memorial Cup is worth watching for sure because it is the very top prospects around hockey, essentially. I mean, you've got Connor McDavid. I think actually his team is out of it at this point and they can't get there. But you have players like that, Sam Bennett, that could be playing in there.
If you're a hockey fan, and especially if you're an NHL fan, a lot of the guys that you're going to watch in the Memorial Cup,
you're going to see again.
You're going to see in the draft.
Yeah, or you already have seen.
Or you already have seen them in the draft, and you're going to see them shortly because Max Domi, for example, was drafted last year. He's in the Memorial Cup again this year. He's more than likely probably going to find a roster spot in Phoenix.
93 points. Again, you don't accidentally get 93 points.
No, and I think that Max Domi wanted to show people that he deserves the next step.
And he was around Phoenix training camp till the last day this year.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
He was already close.
There's just such great young talent, and the game is so fast. It's very physical for young players, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. And thank goodness the NHL Network carries it.
Yeah, that's true. The NHL Network. Have I ever told you my NHL Network story? I don't know how. I never heard of it until I had it. So, there was never any, the NHL Network's coming. Well, that'll be exciting. One day I turned my TV on. Imagine my happiness. And I'm going through the stations, and obviously there was nothing on because I didn't have the NHL Network yet. So what would I watch? And I found this station. I'm like, hey, they're showing hockey. And I realized this station only shows hockey. And
I'm very, very happy.
That was 4 years ago, and I don't even know where my remote is. Stuck on that station for 4 years.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, how are the new wheels?
They're good.
Figured all the electronics out?
Yeah, I had plenty of time as I sat in traffic for 6 hours driving over here today. This should be about a 20-minute, maybe a half-hour drive, but, it wasn't 100% sunny out in Phoenix, so nobody got out of my way.
And you were driving into the sun.
Yeah.
So, and who's the big opponent tonight?
For me?
Yeah.
Apathy.
Bob's Burgers?
I don't know. I don't even know who we're playing. Sounds like an adult league team name. I have two questions for you.
Okay.
And they're going to have to be rapid fire because I do have hockey here coming up, which I consider kind of training for this show. Can I write off playing hockey if I talk about hockey?
I'm not sure.
I don't think I can. Hopefully the IRS isn't listening. Daniel Alfredson, will he be back next year?
Yes.
Okay. The Minnesota Wild. Why has there never been a Stadium Series game in Minnesota? And will there be one now because of the run the Wild are on? And was there going to be one anyway? Because I didn't think of this until I realized, hey, we haven't had an outdoor game in Minnesota yet.
What stadium would they play it in?
Don't answer my question with a question.
They have a dome.
So just take the roof off. There's not an outdoor rink anywhere in Minnesota?
Big enough?
All right, fine. I guess that's true. So that's why that hasn't happened yet. Well, aren't you special with all the answers over there, Doug? That's it for episode 39. Join us next week as we begin looking ahead to the conference finals.
We'll also take a look at the World Championship, which will be underway, and we'll see how our North American teams are doing internationally.
Plus, whatever else happens in the next 7 days. Thanks for listening to the Hockey Podcast.